Starting an Everton career mode with David Moyes feels like a nostalgic homecoming. The former Toffee manager is set to replace Sean Dyche in a bid to guide the club away from the relegation zone and secure safety by season's end. Moyes, with his wealth of experience, will look to reinvigorate Everton and restore their fighting spirits. And now with the January window open, there are several key players that Everton have been linked with. Players that could help Moyes lay the foundation for the club's resurgence. Now, before we assess the squad and go through the list of players that are at David Moyes' disposal, let's talk about the tactics and the foundations that he will look to implement at Everton. So before Sean Dyche got sacked, he did use a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-1-4-1 structure, very similar to what David Moyes had implemented during his time at West Ham. So I do think there will be a few correlations or a few similar aspects to both the Sean Dyche era as well as the David Moyes era. Of course, right now, it's all about survival. It's all about trying to gain as many points as possible in the upcoming games. And that is something that I think Moyes will have, at the forefront of what he's trying to do early doors. Now, quite often what we have seen with the David Moyes team is a very strong physical presence leading the line. Dominic Calvert-Lewin does fit that mold, as well as Beto and maybe even Amanda Broja or Chermati, depending on who stays and who goes. And we will talk about the strikers and Dominic Calvert-Lewin specifically because he is in the final the final 6 months of his deal. So he might even be able to leave for free. But again, we will talk about that when we assess the squad. Now, in terms of the midfield, we've got Doucouré, we've got Mangala, and then I have thrown James Garner in there. I do think there might be 1 or 2 additions coming in this window. Again, we will talk about that later on in the video, but I have gone with these 3 as I do think that together they really do tend to create a David Moyes-esque type system. A hard-working midfield trio, players that will cover every blade of grass, very physically imposing against the opposition, will run to chase down loose balls and 50-50 challenges, will be putting their whole body on the line, and Doucouré literally embodies that. He will be in and around the striker looking to play 1-2s and looking to be physically imposing, pressing the opposition, something that David Moyes again does want to see from a midfield. And then of course you've got Mangala and Garner playing just in behind him. Garner, I think he presents a bit more of a technical ability, something that Mangala does have every now and then, but Garner is slightly more consistent with it, and he can be able to help Everton play out from the back or just have a bit more technical savviness in the central areas. But again, a hard-working midfield trio, an engine room that will help drive Everton forward. And then of course on the wings you've got Ndiaye and then McNeil. Now I don't know if McNeil will be played down at the right, but in my opinion he's the best right midfielder that Everton have compared to Harrison and Lindstrom and so on. But Ndiaye and McNeil are your best wide players, so play your best players and you should be able to pick up maximum points when they present themselves, right? So Ndiaye on the left cutting inside as that inside forward, and then McNeil on the right as a hard-working up and down winger who can patrol the touchlines and create opportunities from that right-hand space. Now in terms of the back four, I've got Ashley Young, Tarkowski, Branthwaite and Mykolenko. 4 players that are currently available for Everton, no injury issues. Mykolenko is the only current left back option, the only natural left-footed left back option that Everton have, which is absolutely shocking. As for Branthwaite, he's in the final 5 months of his deal, although I did see and I did read that he had extended up until 2027, so Everton do have some breathing room when it comes to Branthwaite. And then of course you've got an aging centre back in Tarkowski who is physically imposing, the perfect David Moyes-esque type centre back, and then of course just in behind them is Jordan Pickford. But in terms of the substitutes and the rest of the team, well, we will talk about that right now, but it is lacking. Now if you are looking to implement a tactical preset for the David Moyes Everton tactics, I do recommend the standard approach. I think it fits what Moyes is all about, what his natural tactical abilities are, as well as what the personnel in the current Everton squad can produce on a daily basis. Now in terms of the squad, we'll start off with the goalkeepers. We've got Begovic and Virginia, both in the final 5 months of their deals, and you might want to extend at least one of them. My bet would be on the younger goalkeeper, Virginia. But then you've got the number 1 choice, Jordan Pickford, a player that David Moyes has had in the past. Let's not forget, at Sunderland, Jordan Pickford played for David Moyes and then eventually was sold when Sunderland got relegated and got sold to Everton. So David Moyes saw the talent all those years ago in Jordan Pickford. So I think he would be a key fundamental player for the squad going forward under the new Everton boss. Now, as for the left backs, Mykolenko is the only natural left-footed left back. That means there will be a necessity of trying to get another player that can come in either to back him up or maybe improve on the position as a whole. But I've also seen he is linked with a move away, possibly, potentially. Of course, it's January. There's all these rumors flying around. I don't see Everton getting rid of him. There haven't been that many strong links, or there haven't been stories that I've been like, okay, that could probably happen. It might happen. Anything's possible. I think Everton are struggling with PSR issues and so on. But Mykolenko, for the time being at least, should not be going anywhere. In fact, you should be looking to add to the position instead of subtracting from it. As for the centre-backs that David Moyes can use, we've spoken about Tarkowski and we've spoken about Branthwaite. Branthwaite should be extended for another 2 to 3 seasons. It is the most realistic thing that you can do. Currently in the game, he is in the final 5 months of his deal. But a player that will be leaving that is also in the final 5 months of his deal is Michael Keane. Now, I've transfer listed him. We might be able to sell him to another Premier League club, but he is also looking to negotiate with teams outside of England, and he can technically negotiate a pre-contract and leave on a free. Now, a player that I think Everton should sell is Mason Holgate. He hasn't had the best time over the last 2 to 3 seasons, but I think for the PSR issues, let's always remember Everton have struggled with the finances. I think for that, because he is a homegrown player, he might be sold, and that might add to the green column at least for the finances. And then of course Everton also have Jake O'Brien that they recently brought in. I honestly thought that they were bringing Jake O'Brien in to replace Branthwaite, but it looks like Jake O'Brien will be slowly integrated in, and the bits and pieces that I have seen of him, I've been subtly impressed, and I think he does have a long-term future under the new Everton boss. And then as for the right backs, we've got Ashley Young, a player who's 39, almost 40 years old, in the final 5 months of his deal. You've got Seamus Coleman, another aging right back, a player who is set to retire in the game. I'm not sure if he will be retiring in real life. He might look to play next season possibly. And then you've got a young right back in Nathan Patterson, a player that's from Scotland. He might have a long-term future under David Moyes, but this is also another position. The backline desperately needs strengthening, especially if you are looking to be a bit more defensive, a bit more compact, a lot more physical with the opposition. These are areas that I think Moyes will look to target off the bat in this January window. Now, from what I've been able to research, I don't think Idrissa Gueye will be extending with the Merseyside club, and I think he might be out the door either being sold or on a free come the end of the season. But a midfielder that Everton will be looking to extend past the end of the season will be Oriol Mangala from Lyon. Of course, he is currently on loan, so looking to secure that deal on a permanent transfer would be, again, the most realistic thing that you could do for your Everton career mode. Now, Tyler Onyango does tick the boxes for what David Moyes wants in his midfield. A tall, strong, physical central midfielder or defensive midfielder or even an attacking midfielder that can outduel the opposition in the air. If you think back to any David Moyes team or system, there's always been that one player, whether it's Marouane Fellaini, whether it's Thomas Souček. At Sunderland, he even had a few tall players that could also do the job. So possibly looking at the transfer market, maybe looking to bring a player like that in, or maybe looking to reshape Onyango into that battering ram physical midfielder could be a possibility. As for Decore, Lindstrom and Harrison, they are 3 players that could be leaving the club at the end of the season. Of course, Lindstrom and Harrison, their deals expire. They're currently on loan at Everton. Now, I think maybe Harrison might be extended. There were rumors that Leeds United wanted him back, then Everton were like, no, we want to keep him. Lindstrom, I don't think has worked out, and I do think that he could just be going back. I think there's more substance to Harrison staying. Now, in terms of Abdoulaye Decore, he's another player, just like with Onyango, that ticks too many boxes for me to say he's just going to be leaving at the end of the season on a free. He is a perfect player for a David Moyes system, a player who's always running all over the place, looking to cover every blade of grass, looking to be physically imposing on the opposition. An engine room, a small part of the engine room, but a massive part of how the team functions in a David Moyes structure. Abdoulaye Decore could be that player, looking to get on the end of crosses, cutbacks, being in the box, being on the edge of the box, looking to rotate play. He could be that player. So I currently have him on the transfer list. He is set to expire, but this is one of the players that I'm not sure about. And if you are an Everton fan and you do know a little bit more than me, let me know down below in the comment section. Would you want Abdoulaye Decore to stay, or do you see him leaving? What is your opinion on it? Or if you have actual factual information, let me know, please. As for Maupay, I don't need to say too much about it. If you're an Everton fan, you despise this man heavily, and at the end of the season, when he comes back to the club, just sell him, or I think his contract expires at the end of the season. I'm not too sure, but either way, there's no chance that Maupay plays for Everton ever again. And for the 4 strikers that are currently at Everton, we've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Beto, Broja, and Chermiti. All 4 of these players would fit into a David Moyes system, physically imposing in the aerial duels, can hold up the play, can link up the play. They're all above 6 foot. They all have the physical presence that Moyes would want at the top of his team, spearheading the attack. But Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a player that has come through the youth that is in the final 5 months of his deal. They haven't been able to agree terms, and as things stand right now, he will be set to leave Everton at the end of the season. I haven't been able to find anything about whether he's staying, but I haven't been able to find anything yet if he's going, so it's not confirmed. But as things stand right now, he will be leaving on a free, and he can negotiate right now a pre-contract deal with a team outside of England. And then lastly, I just want to discuss Beto, a player who hasn't really been able to pull up any trees, and a lot of people don't really like Beto. I mean, I liked him coming in, and he hasn't really done much, like I've just said. But he has been linked with a move back to Italy. Torino has been involved. Udinese are looking to maybe bring him back. So he could be sold, and of course that money could be reinvested back into the squad. And speaking of money, when you start off in Everton career mode in FC25, you start off with around £36 million. A decent amount of money, and of course if you sell certain players, you can definitely add to that and then look to reinvest it. Now, before we talk about the potential transfers that Everton could make under David Moyes, I recently read that they had set up scouting networks in South America, specifically Brazil and Argentina, and then of course they have the natural scouting network in England. Now, I have targeted the defensive midfield position, the attacking midfielder role, as well as the striker, in case, you know, Dominic Calvert-Lewin does leave, and in case Beto does get sold, then you're just stuck with Trumiti and an on-loan Broja who is also injury prone. So maybe looking to find the next big thing in England, or possibly in another area of the world, that might be advisable. And then I've also targeted the centre-back departments. Now in Brazil, left back, right back, we need that in the team. We need a bit more Brazilian flair, and I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I just don't know the kid's name, they are linked with a potential right back from Brazil who's young, up and coming talent. He could make a world of difference for the side, and he could look to bring a bit more youth to the aging position, you could say. Now the other positions are defensive midfielder, bringing that deep lying flair, Brazilian flair to the Premier League, and of course to Everton, a team that are lacking, you know, in that department as well. And then the attacking midfielder, I have set that to a shadow striker, because Abdoulaye Doucouré does play that role as well, and you will see him in the box undoubtedly, and maybe finding a young player that can also fulfill that role might not be a bad option, especially financially. And then lastly, we will discuss the transfers that Everton could look to make over the next few windows, including the January window that is open right now. Now these are players that I have added to the list that are linked with a move in real life, as well as a few player profiles that I do think would just suit a David Moyes system. Now in terms of the right backs, we have mentioned Ashley Young, Seamus Coleman. They're past their sell-by date and they should be looking to either retire or move on, and Everton as a football club should be looking to replace them with better quality. Now in terms of Kyle Walker-Peters and Wrench, they do have that extra quality that Everton and David Moyes would be looking to implement into their side and really help lay the foundations for a successful team going forward and in the future. Now Wrench does have that Ajax flair. He has been linked with a move to Roma as well, so that might be quite difficult for Everton. But in terms of Kyle Walker-Peters, another player who is in the final 5 months or so of his deal, he is refusing to sign a deal to extend his contract with Southampton. He could be a player that Everton look to bring in either in the January or summer window on a free. Currently, Southampton are asking for 7 million. That is a lot of money for a team like Everton, who are struggling for finances, as well as they could literally sign the player on a free in 5 months' time. So they are looking to negotiate that deal down, and I do think that both of these players, whether it's Walker-Peters or Wrench, could definitely make that right back role their own, and they do fit what David Moyes is looking for. A hard-nosed defender that when they do go forward, they can whip in a great cross either to the far post or the near post for the attackers. Now shockingly, Everton have not been linked with a move for a centre-back. You've got Branthwaite, you've got Tarkowski, and you've got Jake O'Brien, and let's not forget Michael Keane for the next few months. But that's 3 centre-backs that you can rely on, and let's be honest, both Tarkowski and Branthwaite have struggled either with injuries or disciplinary issues, and that means you have Jake O'Brien, one centre-back, one player that you can actually rely on, and even Michael Keane to some extent has been largely injury prone. So looking to bring in another player, a player like a Mengi or an Azdohimovic or possibly King or Scales, that could be the angle and the necessity going forward. I mean, Scales is great, he's left-footed, so he can be a natural replacement for a player like Branthwaite. He could even start alongside Branthwaite, depending on the formation. Of course, we also have seen in the past at West Ham or at Sunderland that David Moyes has opted for a back 3 or a back 5. So having a player like Scales come in, he is, you know, highly rated, does have a good potential. That could be a plus factor. I mean, Leon King is also not bad himself. And then you got Azdohimovic, who is 6'5", an absolute behemoth of a man. He will tower in over everybody, you know, winning the physical aerial duels from the corners or the set pieces. And we will talk about that soon enough, because I do have a man on the list that I think David Moyes would want. Anyways, and then of course you've got a young up-and-coming English centre-back in Mengi, who could come in and quite easily replace Michael Keane on the bench, or even possibly be the long-term replacement for Tarkowski. And the only left back that I have on the list that has been linked with a move to the club in real life is Matt Targett, a player that will always produce and give his best when he's called upon, whether that's starting games or coming off the bench. And I mean, he did quite well at Southampton back in the day, then he moved on to Villa, then he moved on to Newcastle United, and in all of those clubs he's always given his best. He's always come off the bench and applied himself, or started games and done well down the left-hand side. So signing him with his his experience might not be a bad option. Now, Singari and McCausland are two market opportunities, two players that haven't really been able to set the world alight at their current clubs, and of course Rangers have their own issues off the pitch, and as for Singari at Nottingham Forest, he hasn't really been able to hold down a starting position, whether he struggled through injuries or there have just been other players that Nuno Espirito Santo has preferred over him. So maybe Everton could strike a deal, on a cheap deal possibly, for both of these players, bringing them in, and I do think that they just suit David Moyes and what he might expect from this Everton side. You have a strong, physically imposing central midfielder, and you have a hard-working future prospect type winger. As for the other midfielders, Sean Longstaff has been linked with a move to the club, as well as Jakob Moder, who is a tall, physically imposing presence in the middle, and then we've got James Ward-Prowse, a player that David Moyes signed at West Ham, had a very good season in that first year. Of course, David Moyes leaves, they get a new manager in Julian Lopetegui, and James Ward-Prowse finds himself on the outside looking in, and then eventually loaned to Nottingham Forest, another Nottingham Forest player, but he is still owned by West Ham, and you won't be able to sign him in the January window, but possibly in the summer, looking to bring him in. Having a great set piece taker like a James Ward-Prowse could definitely go a long way in helping secure Everton's survival or long-term future, possibly. And if we look back at David Moyes' teams of the past, whether it's West Ham, United, or Sunderland, or Everton, there's always been very good set piece takers. And then lastly, we will talk about the two forwards that Everton have been linked with. Numa from Lyon, a market opportunity as well as real life links, and then Evan Ferguson, a player that is being shopped around slightly by Brighton, and we spoke about him in the West Ham video I did last week, but he is a player that could possibly come in and replace a Dominic Calvert-Lewin, or just be a player that for the rest of this season at least, he could come in and secure the goals to help Everton secure survival, and then maybe go back and or possibly be signed on a permanent deal. And lastly is a player that I'm most excited about on this list, a player that has real life links to Everton as well as a market opportunity for the club. Lyon are struggling financially and are looking to get rid of players, and possibly Everton could take advantage of that and sign an up-and-coming winger like Numa, 21 years of age. He's got raw pace that will just eat the opposition fullbacks alive. He can play down the left or the right, or possibly we might even see him playing down the middle, utilizing that raw pace to get in behind and exploit the opposition. If they do pull this off, it is a great deal, depending on how much as well, but this would be the number one target that I would want from the January window if I'm an Everton fan. And that is how I would set up a David Moyes Everton career mode in FC25. I do hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you don't mind smashing that like button down below, that would mean the absolute most, as well as if you would like to join up with the Brom Squad Gaming Discord server, the link for that will be down below in the description, so please do consider joining the conversations, joining the FC25 chats and debates, and all that good stuff. As well as, if I have forgotten anything in this video, let me know down below in the comment section. We can always have a friendly chat or debate about it. I'm always open to anything football related. So yes, until the next time, until the next one, I hope you have a smashing goddamn day, and I'm out of here. Peace.